Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to begin by welcoming all of you here to Forastiere-Smith Funeral Home as we begin this very special service to remember and celebrate the life of Ellen K. Landis, who was affectionately known by many of you here as Ellie. We thank you for being here to participate in her service, whether that is here in person or via our live webcasting, while also offering love, comfort, and support to her amazing family. At this time, I'd like to introduce Ellie's son, John, who will begin our celebration of life ceremony.
Good morning. My name is John Norman Landis III. I'm the son of Ellie and John Landis. I really appreciate all of you coming today, both physically and virtually, to celebrate the life of Ellen Landis. Ellie passed away almost a year ago, but because of the pandemic, we could not all gather together to celebrate her life at that time. I wanted to share that the immediate family was able to hold a private ceremony 2 weeks after she passed. We assembled at our villa at the Chapp Family Lodge in Vermont. It is a place that Mom always loved. She's been Nordic skiing there since before I was born. If you ever find yourself skiing or hiking up to the cabin at the Chapp, take a break at the top of the Upper Paraiso Trail where it meets the Cabin Trail, Bobcat, and Oslo. There you will find a bench dedicated to Ellie. The plaque upon it reads, Ellie Landis, cherished wife, mother, and grandmother. She made it to the cabin first. During our gathering, we buried some of her ashes by the bench. We shared words, hugs, and many tears. We also traveled to our camp in Barnard, Vermont, on Silver Lake, another place that my mom held very dear. We buried some of her ashes there as well. It was a lovely ceremony and really helped us all in our grieving process. But we knew that Ellie had touched the lives of many beyond our immediate family, and we wanted to create an opportunity for them as well. This summer, when most people were able to be vaccinated and the travel restrictions had finally eased, we thought it was safe to gather again and planned this larger event. We wanted to give everyone outside the immediate family an opportunity to grieve and share in the celebration of her life. So thank you all again for coming. Ellen Landis, my mom. She was the kind of person who would do anything for anybody. She was always there for me, and she would always show up. She would always help. She was always ready to lend a hand to whatever I had going on in my life. Growing up, if I wanted to go to a friend's house, if I needed a ride to school or a trombone lesson, she was always willing to take me where I wanted to go. She was always excited by my school projects and loved to help. She was a talented artist. She could easily transform my stick figure sketch into a more clear artistic representation of what I was trying to depict. She provided me with a loving home and a safe, stable foundation upon which to grow. I'd like to share with you a story about my mom that happened 30 years ago. It was the start of my winter break during my freshman year in college in 1990 at the University of Vermont. My last exam was late in the day, and I was finally done. I was excited to go home. Most of the other students in my dorm had already left. My mom was driving the 3 hours it took to get to Burlington, Vermont. She was going to pick me up, and we would drive home to Longmeadow together. But she was late. It was a snowy night in Vermont, and the roads were bad. But she was driving a Jeep. I thought she would be fine. There were no cell phones back then, so I couldn't call her or text her. I had a telephone in my dorm room, but that was it. Now she was really late. I started to worry. She should have arrived by now. I watched the snow continue to fall in large fluffy flakes as they lit up by the overhead light in the parking lot outside my window. I could feel the pit in my stomach begin to grow as I just listened to the intensity of the quiet. The phone rang. I picked it up, nervous about what I might hear, but I heard the calm and soft voice of my mom. The first thing she said, very clearly, was, "John, I am all right. I am okay." She seemed more concerned about me than herself. Then she proceeded to explain that she had gotten into a car accident. My dad was on his way to pick her up. Then the two of them would come get me, and we could go home. I breathed a sigh of relief. As I slowly exhaled, I could feel that pit in my stomach fading away. Mom was fine. Everything was going to be okay. Later, I learned that the Jeep she was driving had slid on the ice. It had gone off the road on the highway and rolled several times. It was completely totaled. I would never see that Jeep again, but I did see my mom again. It was a miracle she wasn't hurt. I was a bit too young and self-absorbed at the time to realize, but we had all really dodged a bullet that night. That could have been the end of Ellie's story, but thankfully, it was not. I love my mom very much. I couldn't really imagine a world without her. She was a constant rock in a sea of change for me, a tether to which I owe so very much. I didn't realize at the time how important she was to our family and how it functioned and interacted. That night when I almost lost her, I began to understand how much I took her for granted and how important she was in my life. Over the next 30 years, so much happened. I graduated from UVM. My wife Gwen and I were married. Our son Jack was born. We bought our first house, and through it all, Mom was there, sharing all of those wonderful experiences and helping with all of the inevitable difficulties and challenges along the way. I remember her playing with baby Jack in his car seat outside the bank's office when Gwen and I were attending the closing meeting. Mom helped us move in and decorate. She loved to decorate. We had purchased an unfinished pantry cabinet, and she took it upon herself to stain and varnish it to match our kitchen. We spent wonderful summers together at camp and winters at the Trapp Family Lodge, in addition to annual Christmases, Thanksgivings, 4th of Julys, and Corbin clam bakes. Every year, Mom would make personalized Christmas tree ornaments for each family member that commemorated a special event in their lives that year. One that I received was fashioned from red wire into a scale model of a mongoose dirt bike that I had saved all my money up to buy when I was 10. Later, I received another. It was made from popsicle sticks and resembled a bamboo wall as a tribute to the Vermont Kung Fu Academy where I was studying at the time. Whether it was a holiday, a vacation, or an event like her 50th wedding anniversary, Mom was all about bringing everyone together, creating memories, and documenting them thoroughly. Her 8mm movies, scrapbooks, videos, and comic books were legendary and a great source of remembering all the good times we shared together. 30 years after that apprehensive snowy night in Vermont, when I received the phone call from Mom that filled me with relief, I received a different sort of phone call. It was a Sunday morning. Jacqueline and I were talking about getting some bagels for breakfast when the phone rang. I picked it up, and our world was turned upside down. Mom left us that day. By all accounts, it was quick and painless, but that is little consolation for the huge crater her absence has left in all of our lives. It's not until someone is truly gone that you can really understand how important they were. I cherish those extra 30 years we all got with Mom. It truly was a blessing. But it has been very hard learning to live without someone you loved so much. There are good days and there are bad, but I know that we will get through it all together. I know that somewhere Mom is still looking after us, concerned about how we are all doing. It is a powerful struggle getting by in the world without her presence and tether, but she provided me with a foundation to carry on and thrive. She has left her mark on me and everyone else her bright light has touched. We will all miss her, but reflect fondly back on the many ways she impacted our lives. I really wish I could call you right now, Mom. If I could, I would tell you in as calm a voice as I could muster, Mom, I am all right. I am okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carolyn, and Ellie is my aunt, and John and Dana are my cousins. I'm so happy to be here today. Every time I hear the phrase celebration of life, it makes me think of a rainbow. And life is the rainbow. And today, we're at the end of the rainbow. We open the treasure chest. We see the gifts that Aunt Ellie left for us. We take them out, we examine them, we think about how we're going to carry them forward into our lives. And when John asked me to talk today, I just feel so honored because I spent a lot of time looking at that treasure box, and so I just have a couple things to share with you about what I found there. Certain words really came up for me as I was thinking about Aunt Ellie, and John has touched on some of them. So creative, curious, so family oriented, just always looking for the potential in life. And she was definitely creative, starting with some of those stories. Mike and I were married 27 years ago, and I calligraphied our wedding invitations, and I sent them to everyone. Obviously didn't make one for myself since we were going to be there, and didn't think about that, but Aunt Ellie thought about that, and she saved the invitation that I had sent to her. She pressed violets from her garden, yellow and purple violets, and she framed our invitation, and she gave it back to me as a gift, and we still have it. It's in our bedroom. I look at it every day, and it's a joyful memory of her creative spirit. After our daughter Brooke was born, I just offhandedly mentioned I had a lot of pictures and I was thinking about scrapbooking. And the next time I saw her, she had a lot of manila folders for me, all labeled in her beautiful creative handwriting. Polka dot paper, bold paper, pastel paper, border paper, pictures, embellishments. I had everything I needed to start my own scrapbooking company, and she got me started. She gave me the right glue for my pictures, and she said, this is just a little bit that I have from my stash. And I was pretty sure that she had a lot more. And I still have the supplies because I got so much. And yes, I used a lot of it, but it just made me laugh. She was so willing to share those gifts. John talked a little bit about camp in Barnard, Vermont, and I spent a lot of time with her there too. We went on a lot of walks together. I can just think about her high-pitched, excited voice as she was sharing some beautiful flower and teaching me about it and teaching me about this, leaf that if I just rubbed it between my fingers and it would smell like this other oregano thing. And, she had so much information about nature. And one of the times that really stands out for me, the girls were little, and we were taking a walk, and she saw some moss on a rock. And we spent a lot of time examining that moss, imagining that it would make the perfect roof for a fairy house that she was going to put in the backyard for her granddaughters. And, how are we going to get this moss off the rock so that it wouldn't dry out and get it home? And it was lovely. And so I just think about her and how she always saw the potential. We were just walking by some moss, and the next thing you know, we're creating a fairy house out of it. So it was very nice. And she was so good with gardening. I was at her house a few times in the backyard, and she'd show me around, and, the prized compost pile was definitely part of it. Like, this is where we compost. And she would always bring something fresh to camp when she would visit in the summer. I loved her string beans. So I can just imagine, every summer she comes in with some fresh thing from the garden, chop it up, throw in a little bit of this from the refrigerator from last night and some things that she brought, and then she'd top it with some amazing avocado dressing that I had never had before, and it was just so yummy. So we take that salad out and we bring it out on the porch, and we'd have our family table set up, and everyone would enjoy that food, and then she would disappear. Where is Aunt Ellie? She's getting the iPad because the sun is going down, and we're about to take 100 pictures of the sunset. The sunset that we looked at every single time. It never got old. She was that kind of person. She focused on the simple things, the things that gave her joy and pleasure, and that never got old. When she figured out what those things were, she just did them over and over. And that is what I think about. She just focused on the things, and this is what the words that come up for me: sweetness, simplicity, non-controversial, just lovely, the stuff of life. And on that porch, we had some really beautiful conversations. We talked about her siblings, we talked about her mom, spirituality, our favorite radio programs. We even talked about politics. And somehow that was not controversial. And she's just very curious. She had some really good questions. And I remember one particular time we talked about her upbringing, her decision of where to go to college, what she was going to study, dating Uncle John, their marriage. And I think I asked her some question about, what did you think your life was going to be when you were a young woman, before you had a family and whatnot. And she said her dream for her life was to be a good wife and an excellent mother. And she told me that was her purpose. I mean, she said this, and she felt that she had accomplished this and that she felt very fulfilled. And I want her kids to know that, and I want you to know that. She really was satisfied with life. Like, she just felt happy. And there's an old saying that we die twice. The first time is when our body stops working, and the second time is when the last person says our name. And this celebration of life is really an opportunity to just keep saying her name, to open up that treasure box, to keep looking at it for the rest of our lives, and to take forward all those gifts so that we keep saying her name. So I just want to say to Aunt Ellie, thank you. And I will always see her in the moss. I will always look for the potential in small things. And I will always remember to savor the yummy stuff of life.
Hi there, everybody. I'm Dana. I'm the other Landis son. My remarks will be later, but first we have a beautiful musical selection by Julia.
Hi, I'm Dana's friend Julia. This song is called Waiting on an Angel by Ben Harper. Waiting
Hi. Many of you may know me, but for those of you who do not, my name is Gwen. Ellie was my mother-in-law. I'm married to John, Ellie's first son, and we've been married for 26 years. You know, as you go about living your life, you're unaware of what small events, what little moments will turn into something bigger, something more meaningful. You don't always recognize the early building blocks onto what something greater will be built. In 1992, when I first met Ellie, I was 20 years old. I was a sophomore in college. I was still learning about life and relationships, still struggling with who I was and who I wanted to be. I didn't know then that the cute boy I flirted with at dinner would become my husband, and I would become part of his warm, loving, and generous family. So the first time that Ellie entered my life, she was the mother of my boyfriend. As many of you may know, this is an odd and slightly uncomfortable place to be, with lots of questions and unknowns. What role did she have in my life? What role would she have in my life? What should I call her? How close should we get? How much should I invest in this new relationship? But Ellie ignored all of that. She was going to be my friend, and there was nothing I could do about it. And over the course of the next 28 years, I learned so much from Ellie. Not actual lessons like how to plant a rose garden, although she probably would have taught me if I'd asked, but more like inspiration and examples on how to approach and how to respond to life. She has inspired me in so many ways. And I'd like to read to you several small poems that I wrote called Lessons from Ellie, sharing in the many things, both big and small, that I admired about her. The first and the biggest lesson I learned from Ellie was about being positive and helpful, and I'm sure those are words we will all hear over and over again today. As you know, Ellie was always there for you with a big smile. You barely needed to ask her for help, and she would be there, volunteering to make something for you, help you move out of your dorm room, take you shopping for a dress for the opera, bring you pizza from Rinaldi's, travel to a scrapbook convention, or peel 3 stubborn layers of wallpaper from your kitchen. She was there. So the lesson 1 from Ellie is helpfulness. Whether quick or whether planned, always lend a willing hand. Some tasks are big and others small. Always rise when others call. When life is tough and you're in a mess, don't worry, friend. The answer is yes. Another thing I admired about Ellie was her interest in other people's hobbies and passions. She wanted to know everything about what you liked. And happily, many of my interests delighted her as well, like good food, beautiful scenery, shopping, scrapbooking, paper crafts. We would often enjoy them together. She also shared with me the things that she loved, so that we might take pleasure in them together as well. Ellie lesson number 2, share your passion. Love the opera, love to dine, love to ski, and love the wine. Love the things that others do, they become a part of you. Listen, watch, learn, and share. That's the way to show you care. This lesson led me to my next realization about Ellie. She was curious. She wanted to know everything about everything, not just hobbies and passions. Each question led to another question. She wanted to try everything new, follow every unknown path, seek out the answers to the puzzles in life, both large and small. She approached everything as an opportunity to learn and explore, and she wanted you to go with her to share in those discoveries. Ellie lesson 3, be curious. Take the path around the bend. You never know where it will end. Try the special. Try what's new. Follow the hunch and follow the clue. What will happen? Oh, let's just see. Let's look together, you and me. And what better path to follow than one through a garden? We all know that one of Ellie's biggest passions was gardening. She loved everything about plants and flowers. I was always amazed by her skill and knowledge. I can barely keep a house plant green, but she had full and thriving gardens, both inside her house and out. At camp, she would plant the flowers in the window boxes. At home, she would transplant Queen Anne's lace into her flower beds just because she liked it. And at the trap, she would roam around the gardens, sharing in her wonder. I felt like she could make just about anything grow and bloom under her care, both plants and people. Ellie Lesson 4, Love the Flowers and Growing Things. A plant alone or in a row, water it and watch it grow. Whether wild or grown from seeds, you see flowers, they see weeds. You harvest all the joy they bring, every green and growing thing. But who could deny Ellie's love of a good photograph? I feel like as long as there have been cameras, Ellie's had one in her hands. Or 3. And an iPad. So many scrapbook pages, video clips, fun comic books, they were all created by her hand, which is funny because it did kind of create a small dilemma. Ellie was so often behind the camera that she didn't get in front of it nearly enough herself. So while we have many photos of sunsets on Silver Lake, ski trails at the trap, presents under the Christmas tree, family meals at the villa, flower gardens in Acadia, tired group photos at the end of a long day, Ellie is not in a lot of them. But in a way, maybe that doesn't matter so much. By the photograph itself, we know that she was a joyful participant, sharing in the love and the beauty of the moment. By looking at the photo, we must remember the photographer, an unseen accomplice, but still very much there. Ellie Lesson 5, Cherish the Memories. A sunset or a mountain view, take a photo, or take 2. Faces, flowers, cats, and birds, a picture's worth 1,000 words. The times we share, they will not last. These images will save our past. The next thing I admired about Ellie is a little bit harder to define, something we've also talked about as well. It's a combination of seeing the potential in everything and personalizing them to your liking. Ellie would always find a way to make something her own. She would meticulously stitch fancy ribbon onto a plain ski jacket, hand alter a shirt so that the sleeves and the hem fell just the way she liked, put glittery butterfly stickers on her iPad case and her cell phone, fussy cut and applique an old sweatshirt into a homey cardigan for camp. Nothing she owned missed out on the customization of her creative hand. Ellie Lesson 6, Make it yours. If at first it doesn't fit, it's okay to alter it. If it's plain as plain can be, add some stickers, 2 or 3. Made by hand or bought in stores, find a way to make it yours. In time, Ellie took on a new role, that of grandmother. She embraced that title and her grandchildren, with wide open arms and an even wider open heart. We saw a side of Ellie that had come out before, but not in the same force as it did now. And I call this lesson one of indulgence. Although she was never one to deny the pleasures that life had to offer, such as a sweet glass of Riesling, grand tea at the Floridian, an extra scoop of Ben & Jerry's, a cruise on a Disney ship, Ellie was never so happy as offering that same indulgence to those that she loved. Ellie Lesson 7, Indulge. Grandma does what grandmas do, always saying yes to you. Sweets for breakfast? Just say yes. I wasn't happy, I must confess. But the little things that make your day, let's indulge, and that's okay. I knew Ellie for almost 30 years, more than half my life. I met her when I was a naive 20-year-old, suspicious of her friendliness and unprepared for all her inspiration. 20-year-old me did not know that the building blocks were already being laid, already being built upon, and that I was going to have a new friend, a new mentor, a new ally in my life. The very best lesson that Ellie could give me was how to be a friend. As my early suspicions quickly turned to surprise, and my surprise to joy, I realized that Ellie was true, through and through. Ellie Lesson 8, Be a Friend. Slow to anger, quick to smile. Have a seat and stay a while. Have some coffee or have some tea. Have a snack and sit with me. I'd love to listen to what you say. I'd love to hear about your day. I'm still learning all the lessons Ellie had to offer. I'm striving to be a better friend and letting myself indulge a little more. I'm trying to take more pictures and share those memories. I want to be slow to anger and quick to forgive, to step up and help without complaint, and to be curious about the world around me. But when I'm really stuck in a moment of self-doubt or indecision, I think of a well-known phrase that we've all heard before, but I've added my own little spin to it. It helps me move forward with love and determination. I ask myself, what would Ellie do? And maybe that's something we all should do too. A year has passed since Ellie left our lives, but it's hard to feel like she's really gone. Her love and her inspiration live on in my heart, and I hope it does in yours, too.
Hello. I am Devin Landis, and I had the distinct honor of being called Mrs. Landis with Gwen, and we shared that name with Ellie, which is awesome. And I also had the very rare honor of introducing Ellie to her two granddaughters, Catherine and Sarah, and then her second grandson, Duncan. And Jack, the first grandson, definitely brought out what we all hoped we would see in her as a grandmother. And lots of pictures of Jack, more pictures of Catherine, a lot of pictures of Sarah, and Duncan. Wow. In only 6.5 years. Whew. She loved documenting her grandchildren. So I do have a poem to read on behalf of the grandchildren generation. It's a poem called Yellow, and it was written by Catherine, her first granddaughter. And I'll just read it without comment. Yellow. My grandma always wore flowered shirts and vibrant bottoms. She loved yellow very much. She was very cheerful and always willing to play with us. Grandma died this morning, my dad had said, and believe me, I'm sad too. I thought that it wasn't true, but by his emotions, it was true. Like you're ready to paint, but you don't have the paint or the canvas. That's how I felt. I felt really sad. I wish I'd valued my time with her more. But she was gone. I thought I could have done more with her. I love the color yellow now, just like Grandma did. Whenever I see bunnies or yellow butterflies, I like to think it's Grandma saying, hello.
Wow. All right, buckle up. So I'm going to tell you about again, I'm Dana, the other Landis son. And you can define other however you want, and I will not take offense. I'm going to tell you about the great things that happened from my mother's passing. But don't let the title fool you. Going through the grief of my mother's death a year ago has not been a great thing. At first, it knocked the wind out of me. I literally lost the strength to stand. When I first heard, it left me paralyzed, stunned. Then I went through cycles of up and down, motivation, backsliding, success. I realized that the foundational realities I had taken for granted my whole life are now changed. And if you don't know, Landis men have a hypochondriac allergy to drastic change. We are set in our ways, and any change will be met with passionate resistance. But if there's anyone who can instill change in myself, my brother, and even my father, it is Ellie. So now that I reflect on this past year, I not only see Mom's presence, but I see how this presence has molded us for this moment. And her presence was based off of joy, kindness, goodness, peace, faithfulness, gentleness, patience, self-control, and love. So this is what she left behind. Joy for my mom was not self-driven or self-created. Her joy came from seeing you enjoying something. Some of my most recent happy memories of how my mom would enter a room, sit next to one of the grandkids, and ask, "What do you want to do today?" She absorbed other people's joys and showed that we can have fun engaging in activities we could find boring or confusing, but in doing so, we connected. Though then I think the things that brought Mom joy was family, and she worked hard to chronicle those memories, or family gatherings and scrapbook pages and home movies, and we brought just a tiny selection of her volumes of work. And the Memorial Ellen Library will be open. We're setting up the it's going to be over at the okay. That was an aside. But we brought a few selections here for all you guys to enjoy, and it was a testament to the joy that she had for not only the closest family, but to all of you as well. Kindness came from my mom in not only the self-sacrificing actions that hopefully are standard operating procedure for most parents, like spending hours in a car to take kids to special events, keeping accurate score of a pathetic t-ball game so her son can run up and get live updates, letting the kids pick the movie, or even allowing and then encouraging 5 to 7 middle schoolers to daily invade the house and infect it with creative tomfoolery. She also fed them. She engaged with them to find out what they liked, and she worked on making that special kind of nacho dip or a specific kind of Snapple. She made things she never would like to eat herself, but graciously made them because she listened to others. She listened. Listening is one of the greatest forms of kindness. Even as I grew up and needed more serious life advice, my mom was quick to listen to everything I had to say. Then she was able to help me by teaching me to spend time listening to others and give that time back. It was a great skill that every father needs, and I am glad that Mom grew that in me. Goodness was displayed first by looking for the goodness in others. She liked to focus on the bright side of life and dwelt on those positives. She also had an immense, invisible presence. She didn't like the spotlight, didn't want to be made a fuss of, but she wanted to be there to witness, chronicle, and enjoy. Being a performer, she was my first audience. Her presence allowed me to grow in both the dramatic and musical arts. She facilitated all those opportunities and was always there, silently smiling in the audience or chuckling behind the camcorder, watching, listening, and enjoying. Whenever I asked what she thought, she was quick to tell me her favorite aspects of the musical phrase or dramatic scene, even at times when she thought it was boring, foolish, or inconsequential, and I'm sure she did. She never let me know. She made it a priority not to stifle the creative process of anyone else with outside interference. Peace shined through Mom by rarely being flustered or agitated. She masterfully balanced the self-induced drama we Landis men bring upon ourselves. Remember that Landis men are dramatically allergic to change? Well, legend heralds that big life event changes will create a wave of anxiety, stress, and worry. This allergy can also come in small fits over silly things as well, like misplacing one's keys, an overcooked scallop, stolen Mork or Mindy chewing gum, or chipped trombone high notes. She started with her tone of voice, which throughout life was that happy, quizzical mezzo forte. That showed me that it's not necessarily what you say, but how you say it to begin any process towards calming, flaring emotions. Next comes Mom's parented dispelling of the disbelief that this horrendous tragedy has even taken place. Well, where was the last place you saw them? And I bet you they will turn right up. They are just keys, remember? And we will find them together. She would throw herself into the storm and walk you through the solving the problem and showing that it could be done without hysterics. Then came her coup de grace, solving the problem, then laying the groundwork for improvement. Now that we have found your keys, let's create a place where you should put them so they do not wander off again. A practice myself, my father and brother still commit to today. This creates a lasting peace in our house until one of us realized that the keys were not in that special place, and then the game just is played again. Now, faithfulness is the loyal, consistent care towards something, someplace, or someone. It must be maintained, cultivated, improved, expanded, and all during that time admired. The first thing that comes to mind that shows Mom's faithfulness is the back garden in Longmeadow. What started out as a blank canvas on the hill in the backyard in 1975 turned into a practical vegetable garden with large flower beds in the front. A jungle gym was its neighbor for many years, and I have countless memories of Mom working the land while I slid down the homemade slide. Fast forward 30 years, and that same hill is now bursting with so much plant life that it seems to be self-sustaining or threatening the house. My parents love nature and love to share in its bounty. Another fond memory are the spring weeknights that Dad would return home from work at the hospital, pour 2 glasses of Riesling, and they would walk about the gardens chatting peacefully. Mom's faithfulness to their garden made those blissful walks possible. Gentleness was my mom's motto. Throughout her life, she defined gentleness. Some of the top memories of my mom go way back to my wee little childhood at camp in Barnard, Vermont, of reading a simple bedtime story with her at my side as I passed out from 12 hours of nonstop swimming in Silver Lake. It wasn't just the story, it was her engaging, gentle tone of voice that drew me in and calmed my ever-energetic heart. Again, it wasn't what she said, it was how she said it. Most times I fell asleep before she finished, and when I would ask her the next morning how the story ended, she would smile and say, "We can pick it up there tonight. Better to let the author tell it." This created a love of reading that I excitedly passed along to my children. Thanks, Mom. Now, patience was my mother's backbone. For those who know my childhood, rambunctious comedy doesn't even start to describe all the angst I brought to the Landis household. Highlights include, at age 7, riding my big wheels across the neighborhood to play on the Kilbania's jungle gym without telling my parents. It was about a quarter of a mile trip. Dressing up in homemade costumes and acting out original screenplays with my friends for fun and for national championships, plus many an on-camera, off-color remark. This is what I gave my mother, and she just gave back immense patience. She showed patience to watch me mess up, make it right, and then strengthen and have the courage to make better choices next time. Now, as regards to self-control, it took a lot to make my mom angry. And even the things that deserve severe discipline, my mom took with calm care. She didn't hit, she rarely yelled, and never verbally abused. My mother was a personification of, if there isn't anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. It was her grimacing silence that told me that I had messed up big in my childhood, and it had a profound effect on me and greatly influenced how I now parent. Self-control seemed to come easy for Mom. And when my passions get flared, I remember that getting angry at the problem, or even worse, at the person, does not generate anything good. Thank you, Mom, for showing me self-control. Now, above all that I have mentioned, they all weave together to show Mom's love. She loved all of us with an inner respect, devotion, and affection that leads to willing self-sacrificial service. Her self-sacrifice is the shining success of her adult life. She chose to leave her growing career in the medical lab field to engage in the most difficult yet rewarding career on this planet, to raise 2 boys and always be there for them and her husband. Whatever money, accolades, or honors my mother would have earned in the workforce, and there would have been a lot, it wasn't as important to her as 54 years of dedicated, loving service to me, my brother, and especially my father. It's what I love, and it's what I hope you all remember about her. The world needs more of that self-denying love, and we can honor her memory by passing that kind of love onward. But what about this past year? Well, now that I described what my mom has left behind, let me tell you how she still helps us today. She has brought my relationship with my wife, my kids, my father, my brother, and his family to a much richer, deeper, loving level. We've all been through a lot, shed many tears, but have bonded in indescribable ways. Conversations that would have been avoided have been started and will continue to help us grow. The biggest change for me and my family was the decision to move from Florida, start a brand new, different career, be closer to family, and return to the area that we love, New England. It was honestly a move my wife and I had been discussing for 3 years prior. But all that would require drastic change, right? Well, we all know now that Landis men are severely allergic to drastic change, and that was simply what was holding me back. Well, I can now say, in all honesty and fairness, that Mom has cured me of this allergy. And she has made a lasting effect through her life of self-sacrificing devotion. The move occurred, and now we are simply hours, not days, away from family. We bought a new house, and it's yellow. I don't like yellow. But as we all know now, it is Mom's favorite color. It's beautiful, and I know she loves it. And I look forward to the future. Yes, I accept the moments of heartache that will appear and vanish, but I am encouraged to see the better choices we all make of having known her. I have hope that one day I will see her again in heaven. I have no regrets in our last words. I gave her a big hug, kissed her on the forehead, and said, I will see you soon. All right. Now that I got that out of the way. All right. This is the most important part. In the end, only one thing needs to be said. Ellie Landis loved you all, and so do I.
Thank you, Dana. That was beautiful. In a moment, I'd like to invite anyone that would like to share a story or remembrance of Ellie and give each of you the opportunity. However, before doing so, I would like to share a message from a dear friend of the Landis family, Alan Goodman. And the message reads, September 2nd, 2020. To John and the family, words alone are not enough to express the deep, heartfelt sympathy I want to extend to you, the boys, and the entire family on the unimaginable and unfathomable loss of dear Ellie. She always greeted me with a warm, sincere smile and a kind word upon entering your home for a wine tasting. I could see by the beautiful flower beds, flowering trees, and bushes, and the way she kept things at home, that she appreciated the natural beauty that life offered her, and she swallowed it up in big doses. 50 years together is a long time, but never enough. You guys were a dynamic duo and a great team, enjoying so much together over those years. I could see she was right by your side throughout the years, standing tall and strong, and always being supportive. Who can ever forget the taste of Ellie's very special and tasty bundt cake, made with an ample amount of usually German Riesling wine? Sounds delicious. This was almost always served at your wine tasting at the end of the night, topping off the evening with a dose of sweetness that came from Ellie to put the final touch for you on your tasting. The grief and sorrow will give way in future days to the many memories of life enjoyed together, including, but not limited to, the opera in New York, out to dinner, at the BSO, at Tanglewood, or at the Springfield Symphony. When the grandchildren came, that brought a whole new chapter to her life that she took much pride and pleasure in, making sure to spend lots of time in Florida, as well as up here with the little ones. Her loss will leave a gaping hole in your heart. Take comfort to the many wonderful memories you have of a life well lived together. May her memory be for a blessing. May your family only know happiness in the future. Attorney Alan R. Goodman, Longmeadow. Is there anyone that would like to share a few words? Yes. Oh. Yeah. Dr. Landis, you will have your opportunity. Yes, sir. Uno momento, por favor. Yes. Anyone like to share a memory or a thought? You don't necessarily have to come up here if you're not comfortable. If you want to stand where you're seated, you're more than welcome to. We want to give anybody the opportunity. All right. Well, at this time, we all know that most of you, well, obviously all of you, have very special memories of Ellie. And if we think about what these memories are, they're love, in essence. And it's this love that will warm all of your hearts every time you think of her. And this time, I'll turn over the mic to Ellie's husband, John. Dr. Landis.
It's been a difficult year for me and the family. I think if you have seen, the family has supported me and given me incredible strength throughout this year. What has been said here today is absolutely true about my loving wife of 54 years. This would have been our 55th year. In the audience are people that have touched our lives, members of the family, neighbors, work colleagues, friends, wine tasting friends, hunting and fishing friends, and anybody who knows my wife. She touched them all with her kindness and her blessing. It's with a difficult heart to be without her now, but she's still at my side, and my family is with me and supporting me, and that's been the most incredible gift that she's given us. Everyone in this room has touched my life. They're either colleagues, relatives, neighbors, personal friends. I want to especially thank my sons my daughters-in-law, and my grandchildren, and my niece for what they've said today. It's been absolutely wrenching and beneficial for me to go through this situation. I'd like to also personally thank some key neighbors, Jack and Lynn Skypeck, Steve and Sandy Metz, the Nowickis, Tom and Claire Nowicki, and Bob and Sheila, who are my next door neighbors. And many relatives here from the family on the Landis side, on the Midigi side, and on the niece side have been able to be here, and hopefully some of them are watching this on closed circuit television. I also have some colleagues that come from a long distance, two close friends from medical school and internship, Bill Morrissey and his wife, Dave Knockinson, Steve Metz, who is also a physician, and back in the back row, Dr. Lioto and her husband. Dr. Lioto was one of my associates at the hospital. And my wine tasting buddies, they're there. Mike Quinlan, Paul Provost, Scott Huff, and Hank Champagne. I really appreciate your coming. My dear friend Bob and his wife from New Hampshire, Ken and his wife from Springfield. I can't forget the other two people of the wine tasting group, Terry LaPierre. There's a picture of the group out in this way, and Bruce and Sandy from the wine tasting group. I thank you all for coming, and there will be a brief intermission, and Brian will tell us what is after this. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Landis. Like he mentioned, this does conclude our services today for Ellie here at the funeral home. However, the Landis family has extended a very sincere and gracious invitation to continue the celebration at Twin Hills Country Club, which is located on 700 Wolf Swamp Road in Longmeadow. Please join the family where they'll be able to thank you a little bit more personally for being with them, and also to continue in the celebration of such a wonderful lady's life. But again, on behalf of Dr. Landis and John and Dana and the entire family, they'd like to sincerely thank each and every one of you for being with them today. Thank you very much.